You so much, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ramabaga Thuso. I am a junior lecturer at the University of Venda at the School of Law under Public Law. I am also an LLM in human rights student. I am part of the group Univen Human Rights Law Defenders. Today I would like to talk to you guys about the issue of gender-based violence. I would like to conscientize you guys on the issue of gender-based violence, looking at it from a human rights law perspective, from a human rights law lens. So gender-based violence is a social problem. It's not only a social problem, it's also a legal problem. It's happening globally, regionally. We look at Africa as a region. We can look at Asia as a region. They're also faced with, this issue of gender-based violence. It's also a domestic issue. It happens, in our country. Sadly and regrettable as it may sound, South Africa as a state is regarded, as the rape capital, due to its high rate of, crimes like rape. It's also deeply rooted, in culture and cultural practices, and beliefs, across the world. It cuts across cultures, and also in the system of patriarchy, that is prevalent in the world and has always been prevalent, across different countries of different nations of different cultures, where we find women's rights being, violated and women being discriminated on simply because they're women. And in most states, we would find that women do not have a voice. They cannot be able to speak. They cannot be able to hold positions of power. Gender-based violence, mainly affects women and children. While it may also, affect men, the research data indicates that it's more prevalent against women, which is why we have campaigns such as these too, and you find that gender-based violence is leaning more towards women. So gender-based violence is also a human rights issue. It's a human rights issue in this sense. We have a multitude of human rights that are guaranteed for all of us at the international level, at the United Nations. We have an instrument such as the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of we have instruments such as the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. At the UN level, we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which guarantees everyone the rights to life, the right to equality, the right to non-discrimination. At the regional level, at the African Union, we have, the Maputo Protocol, which deals, with issues that are peculiar to women. In Africa, we have issues such as, female genital mutilation. These are gender-based violence issues, that should be addressed. So this is to say, as a human being, you have rights, right? And these are legally provided for, and they are protected. Your rights are protected at the United Nations level, by conventions and treaties. And in South Africa, human rights are still protected in terms of the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights. It's noteworthy to mention that according to Section 2, our Constitution is a supreme constitution, and our Section 9 guarantees the right to equality. And we also have, criminal laws such as the, Sexual Offences Act and other, criminal law statutes that generally condemn, issues of gender-based violence in the country. So this is the basis in terms of which an individual can be able to claim, the fact that gender-based violence should not happen against them, because they are entitled, they have rights not to be subjected, to gender-based violence. So gender-based violence occurs, in different environments. It occurs domestically in our homes. We find, parents sometimes, we have issues of parents raping their own children, and that information ends up being concealed and not reported. It happens in workplaces, women find themselves, being harassed sometimes for jobs. They face all these sorts of abuse. It also happened in educational institutions, where you find, people in positions of power, employees, perpetrating gender-based violence, against students. And it also happens, between students themselves. They perpetrate violence, against each other. It also happens, in the public. Generally, in the world, there's a general perception that, women should dress in a specific way. If, they wear clothes that are more revealing, then, they're calling for people like rapists to come, and perpetrate such gender-based violence against them. It also happens in relationships where you find people tolerating, gender-based violence when they're not supposed to do so. So gender-based violence happens for many reasons. Due to a lack of trust, it can happen due to shame, tolerance. Sometimes, people, when they're in a relationship, they say, this is my partner, I will stay with them. But no one is supposed to tolerate any form of abuse, whether it's physical or emotional, right? I spoke already about concealment, to say certain families conceal gender-based violence that's perpetrated against children. And then sometimes it happens due to the fact that, the victims of gender-based violence are fearful of the repercussions that may come, if they report such crimes. Sometimes it happens, due to socio-economic reasons. We have a multitude of women in the world who are not able to economically sustain themselves. So they tolerate, violence from men because they cannot be able to provide for themselves. And at the UN level and also in South Africa, all people have the right, to rights to food. The state can be able to provide, all these things. So the way we can be able to, effectively intervene in gender-based violence is to do what I am doing already, raising awareness, teaching people about gender-based violence on how they can actually intervene. Being vocal, we must talk about these issues and acknowledge that they happen in our communities. We must utilize the criminal justice systems. We must report these crimes. We must try to gain enough courage to report these crimes. We have human rights institutions. In South Africa, for an example, we have the South African Human Rights Commission. We have a lot of other commissions and NGOs that deal, with these issues of human rights that can actually protect. So we should be able to report these issues. We can use the internet, and social media to find, these institutions. We can use social media to report these issues and talk about these issues, right? So that the public can be able to intervene and assist and provide advice. In institutions of higher learning, we can use support structures, that are, and mechanisms that are, are available, for reporting such. So for an example, if you're a student or if you're a person who is employed at a specific company, the minute you get there, you must ask, what support structures do we have? Do we have psychology? Where do we report misconduct? Where do we report, issues such as assault, gender-based violence? And you should be able, to use, the support structures. I personally would advise, companies and institutions of higher learning, to include, these support systems and mechanisms, that deal with gender-based violence, and maybe also issues of psychology that would help victims of gender-based violence, to be included as part of, orientation, so that employees and students know where to report these things. This would be a very good intervention in that it would empower the students so that they can be able to report, knowing where to report, and knowing that there are people and institutions and mechanisms that are that are readily available, to assist them. Furthermore, at institutions of higher learning, we can use school representative councils, we can use disciplinary committees, we can use legal departments to deal with issues like this. In short, I thank you so much for being with us. Please spread the word. Gender-based violence must end. Thank you so much.